Hey, Noto, good to see you again, man.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
All right.
So it's your time finally.
All right. Let's get started. All right.
Let's
So
get
give me a
started. Let's
second
start.
and I will share my screen here and we will
Yep.
jump into this. All right, here we go. All right. So
Okay.
it's good to be back. So yesterday I was on a panel with Noto and a few others in the metaverse and so happy to be back to talk about Metazone. And just to give you a little bit of background of sort of like who we are, where we come from, why we're here, is back in 2019, we started a podcast called The Block Runner, which we still run today. And it was focused on cryptocurrency. And pretty early on in that podcast, we stumbled upon Decentraland. And we were searching around who was talking about Decentraland back in 2019. And there was nobody except good old Maddie from DCL Blogger. And so we decided to reach out to Maddie and we interviewed him on the podcast. And he was really the one who got us into Decentraland. And you got to remember in 2019 at the time, before the beta, it was just a black grid. It was just an 2D image of squares that people owned. And we were trying to figure out, I was like, how is this happening, right? And pretty soon after that podcast, I think Decentraland launched the beta like in, I want to say like September or October timeframe, and they had a Halloween event and everything. We participated, and pretty quickly after the beta, we were deploying content. And after that, after deploying content, we realized that there was a pretty big problem, right? And that problem was that there's this trilemma that is manifesting in pretty much any virtual world. And that trilemma here, and I'll kind of skip through this, that the trilemma is basically there is a bunch of landowners who spent a ton of money on this virtual land. And most of the times those landowners don't have any skills to build on top of that land, right? And so Decentraland has built this builder. It's pretty easy to, kind of make, your scene kind of look good, but it doesn't fulfill kind of the what we expect the metaverse to be: engaging content, reasons to be in the metaverse in the first place, right? So without the landowners having the skill to develop, then why would any person, anybody jumping into the metaverse, why would they visit a world that is essentially empty, right? And so that doesn't really make sense. And then from the developer standpoint, it's like, why would I build anything if there's nobody here, right? And so we have this trilemma situation. But my brother, who ended up building all of Metazone, he's a developer himself. He's the first user of the platform, and he realized that as a developer, let's just make it easy for developers to make content, and then we distribute that content to people who want to deploy that on their land. And so once we did that, we had a bunch of people come into the platform and make a bunch of content, user generated content, and people were buying it. People were buying it, deploying on their land in a few clicks. And I think the first step to tackling this trilemma is having an easy place to build that content and make it easily distributable. So once tackling that problem, we found that interoperability was another issue. And so when people talk about interoperability, they really, what they're talking about is like avatar interoperability. And even though that's sort of important, it's not important right now. It's not a bigger problem than the problem I'm about to outline. And that problem is that from a developer's point of view, they they don't want to pick a particular silo to make content, because it would be just easier for them just to make a web app or make an app for the iPhone or Android. It's easier. It's a bigger marketplace. It's a bigger market, right? And so without an ability to be able to make that content and make that content accessible in multiple virtual worlds, the developer is not going to build for any one world, right? They're just not going to do it because it's too costly. Anyone who's building in the metaverse, they know how expensive it is to build anything customized. And so it's too costly from a perspective from the developer to make that content, spend that time making that content for individual silos. So instead, they would rather make content that could be deployed in Decentraland and other virtual worlds. So part of that interoperability and the sort of the feels like the responsibility that we have is make that content that our creator base and user base builds and make it deployable in multiple virtual worlds that of course have compatibility with the SDK. So these are the things that we're thinking about from our platform perspective. And it's been one of those things where being this early comes with its own unique problems. It's almost as if that we're solving problems today that are very specific to the early adoption of the metaverse today that likely will not be there in the future. And so, but that cold start situation is one of the more difficult things to tackle. And without solving this particular issue, I mean, we're going to be looking at metaverses with relatively empty land for the most part, right? We do have like a lot of successes out there, Golfcraft, we have MetaView, Meta Ads, we've got good content, of course, DG, we don't even mention them. So we got good content out there, but we need more, right? We need to kind of piggyback off of each other in order to create a bigger user adoption and have people engage and not only come to these events like the one that Noto and Carl has put on, but also stick around after the events, chat with each other and play these games and earn, right? And so part of our responsibility is to kind of facilitate that. And on top of this is, one of the things that we want to do is we want to be able to have creators come to the platform and maybe spin up their own virtual world, right? Maybe they want a specific user experience that they want to facilitate within their community. And so these are the different items that we're working on from the platform. So just to continue on here. So how does Metazone really work, right? So we have users come in, they make content. We make that content as NFTs on the Polygon network. People purchase that content. And when they purchase it, you can install it either on your own land, or you can delegate that content to another landowner. And so what that means is you delegate your meta, the content that people make are called metas. I'll explain what that means in a second. But you can delegate that content to another landowner, they host it for you. And the reason why they would do that is because potentially that meta that you purchased could generate revenue, right? A MetaView ad, a Meta Ads ad, it could generate revenue, and that revenue is distributed to the landowner and the meta owner. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to align the landowners, the content creators, the content owners, the players, the delegates, all aligned to support a single creation. And I'll give you an example of, our image of what this looks like. And we're eating our own dog food, as they say. So people purchase the content, in one click, they deploy that content, and all of a sudden you show up to your land and there's your meta. So exactly what is a meta? So a meta is unfortunately, everybody's using that word. And I remember back in 2019, there was only a few projects with the word meta, right? I think there's like MetaMask, MetaFactory. There's a few that I could remember. But then good old Zuckerberg stepped into the chat and pretty much blew everything up, which is good, right? Now everybody's talking about the metaverse, and we wouldn't have, without Zuckerberg, we wouldn't have Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley and these guys predicting a multi-trillion-dollar metaverse, right? So good for Zuckerberg, right? Good for everyone, right? Listening to this talk here. But for us, when we decided on the name Metazone, it was because the content that we were making were metas, right? These stands for Metaverse Enabled Tokenized Applications. So you can imagine everything in our marketplace are little apps that you can deploy on your land. So it's kind of like downloading an app on your phone, but instead it's on your land. And these apps could generate some revenue. Sometimes an application is just a building, but in other cases, it's a play to earn game or a DEX as an NFT. And so yes, that's one of the most shocking things that we've seen from the platform is that someone submitted a decentralized exchange. And you can buy that, deploy that, you can swap tokens within Decentraland. So that's just one of the cool things about having a kind of user-generated marketplace is that the creativity is boundless. And we've seen that with the wearables, right? As soon as Decentraland opened the wearables to the community, we got a bunch of cool wearables. I mean, just look around. Everybody is like unique, and it's much different than it was when Decentraland were the only people making wearables. So yeah, is really the digital matter of the virtual space, and it's anything a creator can make, and we can tokenize, and then like I said, any creation that generates revenue is automatically split with the landowner and the meta owner. So here's just a few examples of metas. So here you're looking at our location 61-27. Everything there is a meta. And of course, we have creators like Blockchain Architect and several other creators just making all kinds of content from games to buildings. And what you're looking at here are kind of the landowner's unique representation of what they want their land to do. So, and this particular land is by PDub, and it's hosting a bunch of Rovi metas. And so what is Rovi? This is what I was talking about earlier about our first party kind of representation of a sustainable ecosystem for the metaverse. So if you guys go to rovi.ai, just type it in, press enter, you'll go to a website where it shows you that Rovi is about this PFP project in 3D that is deployable in the metaverse. And it's a play to earn game that is hosted by the community. So going back to the analogies of like Bitcoin and we have different nodes supporting the network. Well, the same thing goes with Rovi. People hosting the Rovi game are essentially nodes in the network that are operating the game itself. And so Rovi is not in a single location in Decentraland, it's at multiple locations. So exactly around 28, sometimes it fluctuates 29, 30, but it's located at multiple locations, and you go and engage these different locations to play and progress in this play to earn game. And so this is kind of the representation of a developer who decided to leverage the Metazone platform, which is really us leveraging our platform, right? Eating our own dog food as a representation of what others could do using the platform. And so most importantly here is Rovi is basically a bunch of metas that communicate with each other that facilitate a kind of like an RPG game where you can upgrade your Rovi, you can upgrade the enemy of the Rovi. And all this is completely distributed throughout Decentraland, hosted by several in the community. And now we have the landowners, the content owners, the creator, we have the delegates who are actually playing with the Rovis themselves, all aligned to help push this game and make it even larger. And so this is just a representation of the power of the platform, and that creators can come in, make their own version of a Rovi game. Everything is templates, so people can take advantage of everything that we have as far as Rovi goes, and then create something within your own image. Like I was talking to Noto about potentially adding an ad to the Rovi itself, where you click on the Rovi and a little pop-up shows an advertisement is there. And so pretty much if you're a developer, you can make pretty much anything. And so that's what's really gets me excited about our own platform and seeing what people develop. So our team is myself, of course. My name is William. I am the CEO of Metazone, and my brother is Oscar. He's the one who developed all the entire platform itself. And then, of course, my co-host is Isaac. He's always with me on the podcast. We do live calls for Rovi Thursdays at 10 p.m. UTC. And of course, Dahlia, she's our creative and social media director. And she's focused on just being part of the community and engaging and helping everybody out with everything that's onboarding to Metazone. And so, yeah, that's it for me. I appreciate you guys for showing up today. Definitely check out our podcast. And again, we do a live call, Rovi's 10 p.m. UTC every Thursdays. I appreciate you guys. And that's it for me. Thank you, Noto.
Yeah, thank you, William. That's amazing presentation, kind of starting from history.
Yeah.
And before somebody will be asking some question, I will be like just going around myself. So first of all, thanks for creating these amazing tools where landowners, creators, anybody interested in can use them. Even like we at the MetaView and Metazone gonna be launching some amazing products together, and Metazone is an amazing platform and tool itself for many interested people. And my question here is like, you constantly like from 2019 like try and develop these amazing products and push hard. So so to compare like the growth, right? So you've seen which kind of growth we had from 2019 till today. So can you kind of in a couple words evaluate this growth,
Sure.
because you've been involved in so many years, and would be interesting to know.
Well, absolutely. Yeah, so back in 2019, when the beta opened, there was tens of people, maybe at its peak, when there was an event, let's say like a Halloween event, maybe it reached hundreds of people, like, above 100, under 200. And that was during like peak events. And at the time, I mean, Decentraland was very buggy. I mean, Carl can attest to this. He was here way before we were. And so at the time, I mean, the very first beta day, I remember the entire world was just gray grid. And pretty soon after that, there was some green grass, right? So finally we got to see like the elements of the world kind of manifesting. But as far as how many people, I'm telling you, there's like tens of people. And I think when Decentraland launched during that chest hunt event, there was probably a few thousand. So after that launch, I mean, it kind of drastically dropped off. But since then, since this last bull run, I mean, we've seen at least a 10x, maybe a 50x people at its peak. And now during the bear, we're seeing at least 10x engagement as far as the differences between 2019 and the bear market today. Because we started in Decentraland in the bear, we're back in the bear, and there's easily a 10x retention from 2019.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And you know what I like, because I met here a couple amazing vendors who stayed couple bear markets. They didn't disappear. They don't go away. And I see that you guys, like whole team at Metazone, have full positive energy and full force going forward, even during the bad times, good times. So you always have this like community building, meetups, shows, etc. So that's amazing. And for the final like kind of question is that where do you see like Metazone future? Will it be kind of like major, like what you see like in the future look like for Metazone and for Rovi?
Sure, sure. As far as Metazone goes, I think the most important thing that we're focusing on is kind of like how the developer thinks of creating content in the metaverse. And as we've all seen a bunch of predictions of the metaverse being multi-trillion dollars, there's a huge opportunity for everybody involved, right? Whether you're a landowner, you're a player, you're a creator, there's a huge opportunity. And when it comes to Metazone and like the perspective of the developer, we got to focus on creating tools for the developers, because there's so many tools out there for web applications and cross-platform applications, and that it's easier for a developer to make content for the Web 2 world. And so the opportunity for us is to make it easier for those developers to make content for the Web 3 world, specifically the metaverse. So that's what we're going to be focusing on. I think Decentraland has the best implementation of what we think the metaverse is going to be like in a most sustainable way. There aren't that many virtual worlds that compete with Decentraland, in my honest opinion. But there's going to be more worlds, right? More than just Decentraland. And I don't know if the world creators such as Decentraland and like the other side, for example, have figured everything out just yet. So everyone listening to this call, the most important thing that we could all do is just create content, whether it's starting with the donut tutorial on YouTube in Blender to like, even if you have skills to develop, right, now's the time to start creating content, because the flood will come, right? We saw a tiny version in 2020 and 2021, but it's nothing compared to what we're going to see in this probably next bull run.
Totally agree with you, and thanks for amazing presentation and to give us more information about Metazone and Rovi. And yeah, I'm gonna say goodbye to William. See you soon.